Time for part 2 of List Week, and it's everyone's favorite part, shitting upon the genres they love so much. Yeah, it's kind of weird how this one across different channels is usually the most popular rather than the one highlighting the best music. Anyways, country music in 2022 is a pretty great year. But that's not to say it did not have its share of hot garbage, some of which is even worse than last year. And this time, rather than showing you just the worst songs out there, I thought I'd combine 2 subjects in one and show you the 5 worst albums and the 5 worst songs I've experienced and suffered through. I feel it's a bit more efficient and spreads the negativity exactly where it needs to go. So anyway, let's dive right in.
Endless trash!
Mitchell Tenpenny released an EP this year called The Lowlight Sessions, and it was actually okay? Like, it wasn't perfect, but considering the incomprehensible awfulness of his last 2 records, maybe things for Mitchell Tenpenny were finally turning around. Maybe he actually has a good album in Oh no! Now yes, This Is the Heavy is indeed awful. It continues down the god-awful pop rock nightmare Mitchell has been on for his career thus far, but my question for this utter madness applies to the length. Who the frick asked for 20 songs? Like, Mitchell Tenpenny is a D-tier radio artist whose entire revenue comes from radio and no actual fandom or following. Who are you making 20 songs for? Do you have a single dedicated fan who's going to sit through this? Don't bullshit me. This would have already been a terrible album if it was only 10 tracks. Why do you need to prolong my suffering? The sentimental moments like More Than Whiskey Does and Bucket List are incredibly hollow and generic. The production on Tenpenny's voice might actually be the worst in country music today. It's up there as one of the most difficult listens solely because of how draining the length of this album is. You're not Morgan Wallen or Zach Bryan. No one wants you that much.
You got a bunch of millionaire metrosexuals who've never done a hard day's work in their lives.
You guys remember Dylan Marlowe, right? The guy who made that shitty remix of Driver's License? Well, he reached out to me on that video saying he isn't all about that generic country stereotypical bullshit, and I was out of depth. He then deleted his comment, and a suspiciously similar comment from a brand new account showed up after. I doubt it was the same person, but anyway. He released a song for the haters like me, proving my sort of perspective of him wrong. And guess what? It just doubled down on how just incredibly inauthentic and how low shelf quality his art is. Girls, Trucks, Beers is just a rehash of every single stereotype and criticism levied against modern country music. From treating women like objects, overuse of alcohol and trucks, and overt pandering to the most basic-minded audience. All while Dylan sounds like his life force is being drained out of him as the song moves along. I talked about it with Dallas Smith. The problems aren't your subject matter or even your culture, it's how you choose to portray it. And when you do it with such an out-of-touch viewing with little artistic or cultural worth, then of course we're going to criticize it. It's not a crime to discuss country culture, but it's shitty when you don't portray it in any accuracy or substance. You try to stick it to the haters, but you proved your lack of credibility even more.
Hey Patrick, what am I now?
Stupid?
No, I'm Texas!
What's the difference?
Country Coming Down is the latest album from Texas native Paul Cauthen, and while I do think it had the best intentions with a lot of its messaging, it nevertheless feels just as weak as the criticism it puts onto others. While having a washy production style, Paul just sounds so douchey that it makes it so hard to relate to his writing. Even the sentimental moments fail to land because it feels like you're being berated with the delivery. The final song is actually really good, but with the bizarre tonal shift by the end, one good song cannot sink a sinking ship of this magnitude. I know this may be a little controversial putting this on a worst list because much of the Texas world seems to love this album and its criticism it provides, but I've seen better country criticism material this year alone. If you like it, cool, but I just despise it so much. It's fun to like things I don't, and admittingly, I can see why someone would view this as a perfectly fine record. As a whole though, not my cup of tea.
John Voight is another. He's just right-wing weird.
Let's put a hypothetical out there. Aaron Lewis, hot off the presses of one of the most pathetic political songs in recent memory, announces a new record. What kind of album do you picture? Probably one with overt hate and supremacist ideology, littered with nationalism bullshit. Well, plot twist, Aaron delivered a perfectly fine album that everyone forgot about because it wasn't political. Buddy Brown, on the other hand, now he made the record you're thinking of. And the pinnacle of stupidity on his record was a song entitled Too true for radio, which is essentially his rationalization of why no one will play his god-awful music. If I can't say my hatred and conspiracy bullshit, then radio bad, ook ook. It never once occurs to this pathetic man to look inward. It's just other people's problems and he never has to change. Its sound is kinda fine, but it's a little tepid and it's really only designed for people whose entire personality is politics. If you rewrote the entire song, I guarantee not a single one of his fans would bother with just how boring it sounds. They just want to hear their shitty personality reflected back at them because it makes them feel justified. In general, it makes Am I the Only One look tame by comparison, which is only worse because Aaron is a worse singer. Sorry to break it to you, buddy, but the truth is, you're too much of an ass for radio.
So find me a horse that I can cover. Find me some stars to sleep under.
It's kind of been a train wreck year for Jason Aldean. Dude's been isolated by much of the country world, man got denied any awards this year. Rightfully so, because A, he's a piece of shit, and B, Georgia is one of the worst albums of the decade. While there are some albums that are extremely two-sided, this one is just completely one note. Every original song sounds the goddamn same, with the low-level writing and perspective of heartbreak, you know, Aldean's entire brand since 2014. It's the same goddamn album with the low-level rock and hip-hop fusion, but it feels even worse given the supposed nature of the album, which is supposed to reflect Jason's home, but absolutely nothing comes out of it that's worth anything. If you said this album was about New York, you genuinely wouldn't notice. Its sense of setting is completely non-existent while being a rehash of why Aldean is one of the lowest denominators in country music today. Ain't Enough Cowboys ironically enjoyable though, so I at least got some sort of entertainment throughout this experience. But apart from that, it's worthless while also having these tacked on shitty live tracks. Because I guess Jason's label can't afford to make a live album. It's entirely a shitted out project and genuinely shouldn't qualify as a record at all. The fact he thought he could get a nomination from the Grammys for it is even more hilarious. It's murky, hollow, and just about what you'd expect from the worst Jason Aldean album. Or maybe the worst so far. I don't know, his career's still kicking. I'm sure he'll top it.
My voice is so fucking natural.
You know, I gotta hand it to Dustin Lynch. For the first time ever, he isn't on a worst list. It was a long time coming, but the man only produced a pretty bad album. And such an accomplishment deserves praise. Well, we did it, folks. I'm sure glad there isn't any more terrible Dustin music going around. Oh, god damn it! So there's this new guy, Dustin Bird, and, I don't understand what his deal is. He tries too much to come off as a country artist while his music is washed up pop. But then there's this bizarre fusion track he did a while back entitled Cowboy Stay. And what makes this track so awful and fascinating is that it tricks you into thinking it will be good. The intro, while a little poppy, has some organic fiddle and some muted steel in the background. So you think, oh, maybe it'll be like Whiskey Sour, which was an actually good pop country track. Until this man opens his mouth. And you know what? I'ma just let Dustin take over.
You could make a cowboy stay, hang up his head, kick off his boots.
I know I complained about Bailey Zimmerman and his awful vocal editing, but this is just taking it to the next level. I feel like my ears are getting shredded as the song progresses, entirely ditching the country instrumentals for some lo-fi production choices that are horribly mixed. By far the most manufactured and inauthentic song of the entire year, and it's rare for me to say this, but calling it country music is genuinely insulting. If he wants to be good, he started out fine with that intro, but he needs to revamp everything else about him if he wants the country world to take him seriously. This might be the hardest thing I've had to do on the channel. So, as of writing this and putting it on this video, the lead singer of Lavender Country's Patrick Haggerty passed away in 2022. He was a beacon of hope and optimism for much of the LGBTQ community within country music and led the way for so many incredible talents we see today. And I sincerely hope for people to respect and honor his legacy. But that doesn't change the fact that his latest album, Blackberry Rose, was just abysmal and one of the worst country albums I've ever seen. It was poorly recorded and didn't account for the air pressure in certain letters that make it incredibly difficult to go through. The musical quality was that of a first grader ensemble and was embarrassingly simplistic on a compositional level, nor did its songwriting truly provide anything of true worth, even if it did have a sense of sincerity to it. And it might possibly be the hardest album to finish with how terrible Patrick is vocally on it. I seem like a prick for daring to criticize the work of a dead man, but I came to this conclusion months before his death, and I think it would be even more insensitive and go against my critical values to exclude it. As fucked up as it sounds, his tragic death doesn't change how much of a failure that album was on every level. I'd rather stop discussing it here and encourage you to listen to his older music and read his story because it's truly inspirational, and rather leave this to be forgotten, as it arguably should be.
I'm bling bling, I'm bling bling. You can tell it cause it says it on my ring.
Back to my cynical self, we have... oh my god, I can't even do this with a straight face. Rolex on a Redneck by Brantley Gilbert with Jason Aldean. Honestly, I may have Stockholm Syndrome because I don't hate this song. In fact, I love it and derive so much entertainment and value from it. Not from any positive standpoint, oh god no, but because it is just the perfect storm of awfulness in every way. The writing is stupid and contradicts itself no matter which way you look at it. Either Brantley and Aldean are just a bunch of privileged pricks who are showing off their riches to whom they deem lesser, or it's all fake and trying to merge the bling era of hip-hop with today's country world. None of the lines make any sense at all, and absolutely do not come from someone who is in any shape or form country. The chorus is hilariously stupid, so much so that you need to start laughing at the proceedings because it is so hard to hate, and incredibly enjoyable from an ironic standpoint. It sounds like shit, the message is fundamentally stupid, and my favorite aspect is that they had to keep the little R on Rolex because they legally could not sing about it without it. That just proves how much of a pathetic single this is and the absolute artistic bankruptcy that resides in two of the biggest losers in the genre. Bad Reputation is my worst album of the year, bar none. Because even if Lavender Country's album overall sounds worse, at least it was an album coated in sincerity. But with this record, nah, it's Kid Rock. When has that asshole ever been sincere? Bad Reputation is practically everything you've ever hated all rolled up into an album. From needless political projecting, awful production to messages coated with prejudice and cynicism. It's basically Kid Rock as we know him incarnate. From trying to pick on Gen Z to sticking it to the snowflakes, which is something we all definitely wanted to see. It's not even funny bad like Rolex on a Redneck, it's just sad and cringeworthy. Watching a middle-aged man act like he has any say or relevance in pop culture anymore. A man trying to come off as edgy and daring, coming out as sad and pathetic. Shall I get into the political undertones? No, I don't think I will. It's indicative of the side of culture I genuinely want to stay away from how inherently batshit and despicable it's become up to this point. Even if you took those points out, it doesn't change the inherent sliminess and awful nature because it's just who Kid Rock is deep down. A garbage human being, one with no sense of flow, sense of production, or competent thought when it comes to songwriting. And it's undeniable that it's absolutely one of the worst pieces of music to come out of 2022. And taking the crown as the worst song of 2022, and as far as I'm concerned, the worst piece of country music of the decade thus far, is David Morris's Dutton Ranch Freestyle. Like, at least with much of this list, there's an ironic enjoyment to it. I can laugh at how bad it is. But with this guy and his music, no, it makes me angry. I want to rip out my hair whenever this guy's stuff comes to mind. It's just as bad as any hip-hop production you've seen, and when combined with the excruciatingly painful writing paired up with his insufferable voice, it's enough to break someone. I've stood tall against the worst of the year from god-awful hip-hop, kindergarten grade quality, dumb industry plan bullshit. I didn't think anything could break me, but this song did. Nothing it says makes any sense besides the fact it's a desperate advertisement for Yellowstone so he can somehow be featured. Newsflash, buddy, it ain't ever happening. Because while Yellowstone isn't that good of a show, they at least have excellent taste in country, and your stuff is so utterly beneath them. Shamelessly inserting other artists' names to use them as clout to promote themselves and taking things to unnecessary subjects. It absolutely earns its 0 out of 10 rating because there is nothing, just nothing to talk about positively. No genuine worth. Songs such as these only come once in a blue moon where it's so stupid and hateable that it genuinely frustrates beyond all belief. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up as my worst song of the decade by the end, because it certainly has an easy road from here on out. I can't even come up with a proper way to end this video just because of how much it stresses me out. So, boom, the video's over. Please avoid it at all costs. Bye.